Welcome in to another episode of the My Two Bits Gators football podcast. I am one of your hosts, Ben, joined as always by your other host, Randy. Randy, how are you feeling tonight? I have a question. It's important. Are you hot enough?
You know what? Yes, very hot B. Weather is warm. We're getting some storms. It'll cool it off a little bit. And that's all I got to say about that. But you know who's staying hot? John Sumrall.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He continues to do good things now. Not as many great things as the recruiting between the previous pod and the one before that, but still some good things happening out there. Definitely continuing to keep this class in good shape. Interesting to see where it all comes together and what it looks like and all that good stuff. Obviously, we did lose Kennedy since the last pod. A little disappointing, but we had plenty of O-line talent still in this class, and it's still, as we mentioned when we went through this, ranks out as the best O-line class really ever. Having top
Ever.
150 recruits, that's never happened before. So um, you could now maybe debate it with one other one because of like where they rank overall potentially because of the top guys and everything else. Anyway, not the point. Let's move on. Let's get into tonight's episode. We're really excited to do this one. I'm really excited to do this one. Actually, I should say, I don't know. Maybe Randy is, maybe he's not. I'm not sure. I'm just kidding. No, we're really looking forward to this. What we're going to go through tonight is taking a look at Summerall and Florida for this year and talk about where we have them rated currently, and then are we overvaluing that or are we undervaluing that heading into this season? And we'll get into why we want to look into this and the aspects of it and kind of the psychology behind it. But realistically, we felt like, we kind of both have a similar take on where we think things are going to be and where they are. And we'll have this discussion, obviously. But the reason we wanted to do this pod is because we really wanted to take a look at, okay, are we putting it too high where we are? Or are we actually maybe putting it too low? And some things that could actually influence that. Now, obviously, we don't know. That's the whole point. We just want to have a conversation about it. So without further interlude or intro or ado, we will go through the intro here and our mission, our accuracy disclaimer, our vision, and our agenda. And our mission, of course, is to provide factual analysis of all things Florida Gator football. Our accuracy disclaimer is that our information will be accurate to the best of our possible ability. We will cite our sources whenever we use them, and all statistical data comes from either ESPN or stats.ncaa.org, and recruiting data comes from on3.com. Our vision is to have unfiltered conversation around the product on the field, as well as recruiting and overall coaching decisions. Our analysis will be based on review of film, and while that we will express opinion, that opinion should always be based in some form of fact. We will also evaluate strategy and tactics and discuss our observation of player personnel decisions as well as on the field execution. All right, agenda for tonight, very simple. What is our current state of the program evaluation of John, of where we think things are going to go? We'll have a discussion around that, talk a little maybe ceiling and floor here for next season, kind of give a thought process around that and maybe where we think it'll come in between that in terms of the record and just what things will look like. Then we'll talk about, okay, based on that analysis, what would cause that to be an over evaluation and what would cause that to be an under evaluation. And that's it. That's literally the soul of the agenda. But I think there's a lot to kind of get into there and dissect. And then, of course, we'll wrap things up and sign it off. So with that, get us started. Talk to me about what you think. And I think it's similar to what I think based on conversations we've had. But talk to me about what you think. Give me your current state of evaluation of where we are. As positive as a lot of things have been, where do you think we're going in terms of the play on the field in 2026 right now, gut feeling and why?
So here's what's tough about this. Look what happened. Well, since we've been doing this podcast, look what has happened the past few years, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you can tell I still have egg on my face. We're still cleaning up from last year.
We both do, buddy. We both do.
Right. So the thing about that is understanding how do we stay grounded? We talk about the orange and blue goggles. We talk about all the off-season additions, camp, the hype, all these different things. Now we have a new staff and some of the different things addressed in the staffing that we've asked for, that we've begged for over the past few seasons. We have it now. Right. And so we look at the staff that was brought in. We look at the staff assembled. Of course, Sumrall said, I'm not going to hire friends. We got a few friends on the staff.
Couple.
Truthfully, we got a few friends on staff, but
Yep.
aren't they,
It's worth noting.
right? But are they the right guys in the bus? Are they on the right seat on the right side of the bus to get this team going this way? So we have to make sure, and I think we made a promise to ourselves that we were not going to overhype. We were not going to wear the orange and blue goggles. We were trying to call a spade and understand that um, we have opened the treasure chest and seen the fool's gold before.
That's
And
right.
so the main thing here is how do we check our own pulse and understand new staff? He was able to retain the big five, like we talked about before, a daunting task in this days of college coaches. So he retained that. That's awesome. It's hard because we have a massive QB battle going on right now. It's hard because you think we probably could have made a bigger impact in the QB side, but then a lot of people would argue with that and say, well, guess what? He did make a big impact because technically the QB that got transferred in was going to be the QB, his QB, Faulkner's QB at Georgia Tech, right? So that, in addition to a lot of the defensive changes that Brad White is making, um, again, there's a lot to be excited for. However, we need to temper that excitement because we just don't know what's going to be until it is, right? We don't know what we don't know. Everything sounds good, it looks good, it feels good, but is it really going to translate, as you've mentioned before, B? Is it really going to translate on the field on Saturdays inside the white lines? We don't know yet.
Yeah. No, that's right. That's right. And you mentioned retention of talent. So let me go to that first. We gave Billy a lot of credit for that. You know, go back to the 2024 offseason, right? And who we lost right before that year, right? And I thought I had it pulled up, but as usual, that did not pull up the correct year. So this is going back to 23. So I
Well,
apologize.
names will not mention, but
Yeah. So good old Google not producing what I wanted it to there. I just caught that these are names that are a year too old there. Um, so anyway, the transitions that did go out, I do think Princely did transfer after 24. I believe that was right. No, because we played against them. That's wrong. That's after 23 too. So anyway, this list is outdated, so I'm not going to use it. But we had good player retention. I was going to try and mention some of the notable names that we lost, but we did have good player retention after 24. Right,
sure.
a lot of people stayed. That's why we didn't hit the portal that hard. Right, it was talked about. Hey, we didn't hit the portal that hard because we kept a lot of guys. Right now, conversely, with John, we kept a lot of guys and we still hit the portal pretty hard. Interesting corollary there, but that's not the point. The point is that we were pretty high on the talent retention, right? We kept most of the guys that we really wanted to keep, that we weren't losing to graduation. Yes, we lost players. Of course, we lose players every year, but we weren't losing sleep, if I recall anyway. And I am really struggling to remember anybody of real significance that we lost in 2024. I'm trying to remember. That's why I Googled it. I can't. But I really don't think that we lost anybody that was like, oh my, right? There was nobody that really stood out to me in my mind anyway, um, of big time significance going into that year, which is fine. However, we kept all the core pieces is what I'm trying to say, right? And the point being there is that that's not everything, right? There are other problems that can arise, right? And we knew some of those, or we thought we knew some of those, but we thought that the talent we kept could overcome some of those things, right? You also mentioned hiring friends, right? He definitely did hire some friends. I think in fairness, again, trying to just be as deferential as I can be here, right? If you look at it, he didn't say he wouldn't hire any friends, right? He just said, I don't hire friends. I think he meant that in terms of, I don't only hire friends, right? And he did clarify that statement later for the record. But be that as it may, he does have some friends on staff, as you mentioned. Is that concerning? Not necessarily, but it could be a thing. We saw Billy bring a lot of G5 guys and it didn't work out so well. But I think the thing that makes me feel better about it is the points that are really important: the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator. Now, Brad White technically may be a friend, but he's certainly got SEC coordinating experience, right? He's qualified, right? And I think that's the biggest thing. He didn't bring up G5 guys for those jobs, right? Also, I listened to an interview with Scott Strickland a few weeks back where the targets he had for offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator were Buster Faulkner and Brad White. He got exactly who he wanted. And he told Strickland that when he interviewed. So for what that's worth. I think that's important. So having said all of that, where are we, right now, right? Good talent retention, agreed. I think some good portal acquisitions, nothing super splashy other than maybe Singleton, though could be that oh boy, Wake Forest transfer. Name blanking on the name. Incredible spring game. Help me
Maze.
out. Mays, Micah Mays. Thank you. Thank you. That could be a really good one too. But from like a ranking standpoint, nobody's flashing really high. I mean, when they updated the rankings, those two are good, and Philo actually ranked higher. But ultimately, nothing that really stands out or jumps off the page like a top transfer class. We don't have a top transfer class overall. I think we
Mhm.
ended up like 12th or 13th or something like that in 247. Um, in terms of how they do the rankings, which I prefer actually for the transfer rankings because they don't bounce it off the outgoing. It's just what did you bring in and how does it rate, right? So anyway, what does that mean for next year? So again, we talk about the product on the field. What does it mean for next year? So let's have a little discussion around the ceiling, the floor, if you want, and where you think that's going to kind of come in. So give me your breakdown of that, however you want. You don't have to do ceiling and floor. You can do whatever you want on that, but give me some kind of pulse about what you think the record is going to look like. Again, just high level. We're not going game by game here. This isn't the schedule breakdown. Just overall record. Give me your thoughts on it, however you want.
I was gonna say schedule breakdown in 4 weeks. No, but the
Yeah.
when I look at the overall crux of this, I do look at the schedule and I'm thinking, okay, you open up against Florida Atlantic. After that, you've got the Fighting Humpbacks, right?
Fight
The
Campbell, baby.
right Campbell. So those two there, really nice openers. I would have liked a little bit more tougher opponent to start off, but hey, it's fine. I like cupcakes. I love
I mean,
cupcakes. And after that, we go to Auburn. Um, worried about the Ole Miss game. We'll see about that. Missouri, we always had issues with Missouri.
mhm.
South Carolina, okay, South Carolina. Um, we'll see if Coach Beamer has a job here at the end of the fall of 26. Texas. That I have a feeling Sark and Arch are biting at the choms. They want that game back from last year. They know they messed up the bed on that one. Georgia's going to be a tough one in Atlanta. Yeah, good night. And then Oklahoma's going to be interesting. Kentucky, Vandy, FSU. So I look at that schedule. I go, okay, compared to last year and year before, more favorable, especially the opening two. The other
Yep.
thing I look at that we talked about before was the aways and the homes and how that was a little bit more in our favor. So based off of that, I know a lot of pundits, a lot of analysts are saying somewhere in the vicinity of 8-4. And I tell you what, given a new staff, given what we did in the portal, given an unsettled quarterback situation, and given all of the other deltas that exist with this team right now, outside of the talent and wide receiver room, outside of the talent returning in the running back position, outside of the linebackers and the DBs and what we have there, there's a whole lot of deltas. And so that's why I figure we're right somewhere in the vicinity of 8-4. However, if we went 7-5, I don't think we need to sound the alarms just yet, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. And I think that's exactly where I see it, right? I think
Oh, okay.
I think 8-4 is like projection wise. And again, we'll look at the schedule breakdown as a totally different thing. We look at that as a game by game basis, and then we end up with our record when we get done, right? So, but, and you said 4 weeks on that, and I made a face because I'm like, oh God, we got a lot of research to do. But anyway, uh, but the um, but the point being is that I think 8-4 is right where it just feels like what is right, I guess. But 7-5 doesn't feel like wrong. But that's what we want to get into here. That's the point, right? Why do we feel that way? And I think we just kind of explained that, right? The reasons that we have that feeling. But are there other influences here that are either pushing that up or pushing that down, right? So if I was to do a ceiling and floor on this, I would say, just because I mentioned it, I would say 6-6 has to be the floor. Just looking at the schedule, there's just too many winnable games on there. I don't see it going below 6-6. The ceiling, you could You could have a conversation about 10-2. It makes me a little weary to do that based on, again, things that have happened, but that's the whole point of this. So I'm gonna go ahead and say the ceiling's 10-2. I will say the ceiling is 10-2, but it goes to points that we're gonna make later as to why I think that. But I mean, that is a ceiling. That is top of the mark. I do not think it is higher than that for sure. So, having said all of that, let's look at what things could be influencing that 8-4. Let's just call it 8-4 for purposes of this argument. We agree that 7-5 could be there and is okay if it is, right? But but let's call it 8-4 for purposes of this argument. What could be making us think 8-4 and be overvaluating that? And then obviously we'll get to the undervaluating in a minute. So let's start with that and what could be bringing us up. So I'll get us started in that regard.
Yeah,
So your basic examples obviously are going to be your team underperforms their talent level, right? The new hire coaches and coordinators that we have do not produce the on-field results we would expect, right? We don't see a better scheme, we don't see good player execution. And a prime example of this, if you would like one, is rewind to 2020.
last year.
Check out Florida, right? Because we had a very talented roster, ranked number 12 on the 247 talent composite as a team. And not that that's the only measure, but it's a decent one that we can look at, especially if we're going to compare it to other teams.
Absolutely.
We talked about this, right? We were well within the talent range to do some very good things. There were multiple teams. There were 3 playoff teams lower than us in that talent composite. 3, not 1, not 2, 3, and one won the national title, and the other one played in the national title game. 2 of the
Hey,
3 made the title game. So we'll talk more about one of those later on, and it's not Indiana, by the way. Because they're an outlier. Signet is an outlier. That's not the normal example, right? But we'll talk a little more about good old Miami later, unfortunately. But they just make too good of a point when we get there. So,
yeah,
but if you want an example of overvaluating, let's look at Florida last year, right? We thought that Billy's shortcomings that we knew existed. For the record, we talked about him at length. We complained about him at length, but we really thought that hey, the talent, the team, the things that we've established here have found a way to overcome his shortcomings. We said these words, right? The talent is going to overcome his shortcomings as a play caller, as an offensive coordinator. If you've got the guts to call him that, I really don't. But whatever that was. But what it really came down to, I think, when you look at it, is that instead, what happened is all of the stuff that he had continued to do and still didn't change just really caught up with him. It was yet another year of the same old, and that caught up with him. And so we drastically overvalued that last year in terms of what we thought was possible and ended up with the result that we did. Now, I don't know if anybody could have seen 4-8 coming. I would not have called that team's floor last year in any regard unless you had like severe injury issues, which granted we did have we did have some injury issues, but I mean, even more severe than what we did. So I do think that, it's a great example, honestly. Unfortunately, it's a great example to look at for what an overvaluation looks like, right? Is last year's team a total overvaluation? And everybody had us overvalued. We were a dark horse playoff team. We were preseason top 25 everywhere you looked, right? Even though we weren't AP, but we were well, maybe we were AP. We were AP top 25 to start the year. We were AP top 25. We were preseason and everybody's top 25. We were the dark horse to be top tier SEC, make the
yep.
playoff, that and the other. Now we talked about how hard the schedule was, and the schedule was absolutely brutal. But despite that, I think you and I picked us to go like at least 8-4, maybe even 9-3 against it last year. I
93.
think 8-4. I think 8-4. I don't think we got crazy enough to say 9-3.
Maybe not in terms of that stealing, but yes.
Yeah, but I mean, regardless, like, and there was reason to have that belief. There was cause for it, but we drastically overvalued, or maybe in this case undervalued, the amount that we were giving credit to the team being able to outplay its shortfalls that it was handicapped by in what was going on with Billy's play calling and a lot of other things too. Frankly, the defense not really ever changing their scheme. Their scheme was more sound than the offensive one, but it was the same thing. Again, we kept repeating the same stuff and we never changed it. And even when they fired Billy, they kept repeating the same stuff. Like, man, that was, as we talked about, maybe even more frustrating that they didn't even try to mix it up then. But anyway, so that's where I think you run into on undervaluation. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so a couple things with that. Here's what's tough because and I'll put this in the words of my wife said. There's not enough Maybelline to cover up Billy's blemishes, right?
That's a good quote.
That's it. Just flat out. Because to your point, we said, hey, guess what? If there's more execution, if there's cleaner execution, if guys are in the right spots, it's going to help cover up certain flaws. Yeah, no, forget it. Not at all. It didn't. And I think at the end of the day, after we lost the South Florida game, I said, oh boy, things could come off the rails really quick, or that could be a correction. And so I think after that point, we saw 6-6 in the mirror going, okay, yeah, fine. Vegas got it right again, whatever. But yeah, 4-8 with the talent composite that we had, absolutely unheard of. Just unreal. So the thing of it there is it's definitely going to be come back to the for me is the quarterback question, right? Winning in the SEC, we talk about trenches. I'll get to the trenches in a second, but requires not elite, it requires more than serviceable to serviceable quarterback play, right? When you look at entrusting a brand new system under Buster in an unproven quarterback. And I don't just mean Trammell. I mean Philo as well, because guess what? Philo was not a starter at Tech. Philo was going to be the starter this coming season. And guess what? For Philo to be with Buster for multiple seasons and understand that offense, but yet Trammell come in out of the blue, pick it up, have the physical abilities to go with that as well, I think it has Buster going, wait a minute, right? So
Yep.
the quarterback play is going to be a huge deal around this topic. The second thing, SEC play, trenches, depth. We know what we have on the offensive line. Actually, let me rephrase that. We don't know what we have because of all the fine
Oh,
moving pieces right now.
yeah.
We have a better idea of what's happening on the defensive side of the football. But at the end of the day, we, we know you call him Big Finley style, I'll call him Lake Trout. We know what his intentions are. We know he has the capabilities to build a well-developed and fully functioning offensive line. Can he do it by this fall, however? Can it be functioning on all five cylinders, right? For the front
Yeah.
five that is there,
Oh, I like that. I like that.
right? So there you go. And then the last thing that I would say that's going to add to that argument or position is we know that Sumrall has a level of impatience. So I'm going to call it
Mm.
the Sumrall impatience factor. And we saw what we heard what he said about strength and conditioning. We heard what he said about practice habits, intensity, right? He wanted to make bigger splashes in the portal. Of course, there were some geographical limitations with that, financial limitations with that, time limitations with that, right? Not saying he should have done better. He did better with what he had. And obviously he went back and said, listen, if I had to do it all over again, it was very idiotic to coach a team and to coach two teams at the same time. Never been done before. Can't believe he did it and got through. I couldn't imagine what that period of time was for him. But at the end of the day, and we talked about this before, can Summerall get his message through to this team? Well, guess what? We're about to put the rubber to the road here in less than 2 months, right? Or around 2 months. So based off of that, his hard-nosed, brutally honest culture, that shock, is it going to reverb enough to make that dramatic impact coming this fall? Or is it going to take a season to settle in?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's well said. There was a quote recently, and I don't know exactly where it was. I don't think it was in an article necessarily, but it was in an interview that Brandon Harris did. And this is another thing. He said the secondary, while improved, while certainly making strides in practice and getting better. So he didn't want to like come out and full on
Bash,
bash him.
right?
Is effectively nowhere near what he would consider like the standard or championship caliber or however he put it. I don't remember the quote exactly. I'm
Yeah.
paraphrasing, so forgive me. It wasn't like he was saying it's not anywhere close to where it needs to be. He was saying they're good and they've gotten better and all those things, but like that basically it is not at the class or caliber that he would expect from like upper echelon, right? Like, not putting it up here yet. Not saying it's garbage, but just saying that it's not there yet. And certainly not saying that it can't get there either, but just saying that, it's not at the level that he wants it to be. So, or that he expects it to be for, our team, in the long run. So love that that's the expectation, first of all. Think that kind of expectation setting gets us in the right direction. However, it's also something that should help temper expectations a little, right? And say, okay, we might get there. We are not there now, right? So I think all of those things. You make a great point about the O line. You make a great point about the quarterback situation. We still don't exactly know what's going to happen there right now. What I would tell you is that I think it's easier for a good coordinator to help mask less than stellar quarterback play than it is a great quarterback to overcome poor play calling.
Yes, sir.
I just think there's many more examples of the former rather than the latter, right? So I do think that Faulkner can help that situation. It doesn't mean he can solve it. There are certain times where your quarterback's got to make a play if you're going to be a really good team. If you're going to be a really good team, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be a bad team just because you don't have elite quarterback play if you've got a good coordinator that can compensate for that, right? That to me is maybe one of the biggest things there that we have to potentially keep in mind. And again, I think why we are where we are in terms of kind of being balanced. But what if we're wrong, right? So this is the whole reason of why we have to look at, there's overvaluation possibilities here that have to be considered. Okay, I think we've surmised that. Any other points you want to make on the overvaluation side before we get to the fun part?
No, I think that's I think that was well said. And again, going back to everything else, how do we temper? I think temper is a good word. Our expectations, because everything else coming out is, and we know how national media sources are. We know how the hype is. Football season's around the corner, right? I got the itch, right?
Yeah,
It's
I know.
it,
I keep thinking, isn't it closer than it is? Like,
right.
still, June? Damn.
And so it's one thing where we definitely don't want to take that position of just homering, but
Right.
and so that's why we are talking about it in this way to try and temper some of those expectations and call a spade, but also not be a Debbie Downer and not be a stick in the mud about it. So
No,
sure.
absolutely. And try to be as objective as possible, like you said. Now, everything you just said, let's throw that out the window.
Hey,
And let's have some fun with this because and no, not really, because we don't want to throw data out the window. We never want to do that. Obviously, we're always want to be data focused here, and we're going to make points to back that up, right?
there you
But
go.
but having said that, I do think there's a real argument to be made here, and this is what I was talking about at the beginning with the psychology here, right? We've kind of gotten the crap kicked out of us psychologically for the last 4 years, certainly. And even though, yeah, we had a little run, but let's remember the 8-5 season. Where were we before we finished 8-5? 4-5.
Boring.
Where were we to start the year? 1-2 with horrible losses to Texas A&M and Miami to start that year. Absolutely abysmal losses at home to both of those teams. Horrible, horrible games. Atrocious. So let's keep that in mind, right? When we look at this whole thing and how that season, yes, did turn around and got a lot better, but even that year really wasn't that great. So when you look at it, like it was just better than the other ones, but that's, we can make comments about that, but we'll leave it alone. But what does that do to
Yeah.
you psychologically, right? When you just kind of get programmed and get trained, right? When is the last really good season Florida had, regular season? And I would argue that it's 2020, and that is LSU. So it didn't end well. But prior to LSU, the really only stain on that season was that stupid Texas A&M game at Kyle Field that we never should have lost. We had like 4 fumbles. It was a train wreck game, and I think it was Damian Pierce even that fumbled a bunch, which that guy never fumbled. And
And the
that was
last field goal. Yep.
yeah, and then missed that last field. Like just series of unfortunate events to say the least. We never
Yeah.
should have lost the game. That was ridiculous that we did. But the point being is that's the last really good season, good team, like that we had. Yeah, I don't want to say good team. I shouldn't say that. Last good season that we had.
Season.
And that's 5 seasons ago now, right? And really 6, I guess, right? 21, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 6 seasons ago. since we actually saw that. And that'll beat you down over time when you keep dealing with 6-6, 6-7, which that's a bowl game, but 5-7, yes, 8-5, 4-8. I think that's the correct order there. It's tough. It's tough to go through that and deal with that many, hard years. And it puts this thought in your mind. Okay, well, I don't want to get too carried away in the off season, right? And I'm not saying we should get carried away in terms of like hoping for something that's not real. But let's look at some factual evidence of some things that you already mentioned, right? You talked about the talent retention. It is significant. It is probably more significant than in the year past when you look at some of the stuff that was kept. Now, the quarterback and the O-line are still a question for sure, but let's say we get functional, substantial, decent play out of both of those units, right? Let's say the defense improves significantly because of better scheme. And I think something that you've got that you want to talk about that I'll leave for you on that one. And then you talk about Buster and what he could potentially do with the offense. So let's not underestimate the significance of hiring the right coordinator when you have a talented team. So let me share something here. And what I want to share with you is the ranking for Miami on 247 Composite.
Oh boy. Here we go. The Miami reference.
So this is 2024 247 Team Talent Composite, and Miami was 14th this season. If you fast forward to 2025, they actually got worse by one ranking, 15th. So effectively same talent ranking. Notice we were better than them both years, and they
rub it in.
Yeah. I say that more talent. Shouldn't say that. All right. We'll move along. Here is the next relevant stat point for you. Miami's scoring defense in 2024, 24-25 FBS year, final statistics for InfinityStat.com. Miami, 70th, 25.3 points per game averaged. That's not great. That's right around Florida's level, quite frankly, the last few seasons. In fact, Florida was better than this that year. We beat that. Fast forward, Corey Heatherman higher, 25-26. Whoops, I have that on a different slide. Right there. Fifth.
Yikes.
14.8 points per game. I rest my case. A coordinator hire can make a heck of a lot of difference. They did not improve significantly in talent. They did not have any significant transfers that were like world defining to their defense, right? They kept Malaluga at linebacker. They kept Ruben Dane. They had good talent retention, right? They kept a lot of their key guys on defense. I do think they picked up a couple guys in the secondary, but we evaluated them when we did our schedule review last year. They were not any kind of significant upgrades. They were decent. There was nothing like, oh my goodness, about any of those transfers on defense. And they went absolutely bananas in their improvement. And Heatherman was the difference. I mean, you could see it. That defense was a different animal. They looked lost the season before out there, especially in the secondary. That was not the case in 2025. They were much better. They were much more well organized. They had a much better plan, a much better scheme. So that is the point that I wanted to make sure we made in regards to if you keep a good amount of talent and you hire good coordinators, you can do good things with it. And the sky might be the limit. Now, granted, Miami still went 9-3 regular season last year. I have to look it up. They might have been 10-2. It was 9-3 or 10-2, not sure. But they made the playoffs. They got in. And obviously, they took it from there as I think a 10 seed, if I remember correctly. I believe they were the 10. Either the 9 or the 10, but regardless. Either way, point being, you can do a lot of good stuff when you hire the right person to coordinate your team and coach them well and scheme them well and do the right things to make sense. They made us look silly on offense, that's for sure.
Oof.
So, yeah.
That's because we were predictable.
Well, their defensive coordinator the year before who got fired even said that. We even made that guy look good, and he was not good. So yeah, there's that. Moving right along. I suppose saying that about making us look bad on offense or them looking good on defense is probably not any kind of a compliment against our team. But anyway, all right. So those are my thoughts on why we might be undervaluating and why we really might be able to do better. That, and you look at, of course, just some other things with John and his whole persona and maybe his impatience for winning going the other way, right? But that's less data related and more just feel. So what do you got?
Yeah, so you've got Sumrall, who is a defensive minded guy. You have Brian White, who has been proven defensive experience in the SEC. So I like what those two things do. I like Sumrall's analytical approach to defense, not to mention he played as a linebacker at Kentucky, as we've talked about before. And White, as an analyst, as a portfolio manager, as a numbers guy, I like his analytical approach to the defensive side of football. Having that been said, we know that it's Brad White's defense, but Summerall's thumbprint is going to be right on it as
Hmm.
far as scheme and everything else that goes on with it. So I will submit this to you, B. Summerall coached squads. So let me take a step back. Again, he only has 4 years of head coaching experience. Troy, 2 years. Tulane, 2 years. At his time at the helm, his squads have racked up 97 takeaways since 2022. That is more than any other FBS team in that span. And I get it. It's Troy, it's Tulane still. So you take that mentality and you inject Brad White. And this is why fundamentally, mathematically, I believe the defensive side of the ball is going to have the greatest impact of all. Because when I look at those games last year, going back to what you mentioned, the 4-8 that probably should have been 6-6. Guess what? What do we say all the time about Big Papa Ron's defense? What don't what?
Bend no break.
Don't break. Okay.
Yep.
And guess what? We did a lot of breaking. It did a lot of breaking. And so when you look at this scheme and what they're trying to employ, I think we're going to see a great shift on that bend, don't break philosophy. So that's
Yep.
going to be a key thing. The other thing is, as I mentioned before, compared to a historically difficult schedule last year and even the prior year, this schedule, and I'm going to go on a limb and say this, it is softer, especially when you open up against FAU and Campbell. They're cupcakes, like I mentioned before, but guess what? Like a lot of teams that we see in the past, bigger, more explosive teams, more talent-rich teams, Georgia's, Alabama's, LSU's, when they were top 5 in recruiting, they had their first couple games were cupcakes, right? So what
Hmm.
can you do with a cupcake game? You can work out the kinks. Go back to your point about the proper coordinate, having a good coordinators that are looking at game film, that are seeing that you have a lesser opponent and they see some of those deficiencies. Look at our first game last year against LIU and what we thought, what we felt. Wait a minute.
We had
The score,
questions.
the score did not reflect what actually took place in that game.
Hmm.
Would you agree with that?
100%.
Okay,
We we came away from that game a little worried.
right. And we're like, but you know what? Okay, they saw some things. They're going to go back and look at film. They're going to get in their process. They're going to evaluate. They're going to at all the Napierisms that we heard for the past 3 years. That's what we heard, right? And guess what? It reared its ugly head against South Florida again, and that's when we said, "Oh boy, we're in trouble." So
Yep.
a more manageable schedule, but I would venture to say, and we don't know this, but I would venture to say that this coaching staff is more capable to look at film, work out kinks, and get those players in the position that they need to be successful.
Well, and hopefully to be more tactical, right? To be able to
Yes,
actually make changes, to do things from week to week. Like we know Buster can do this. We've seen the video evidence of it, right? That he can do things to target like a weaker player on defense. Like we historically
expose them.
stood out. We played Tennessee and we kept throwing slants against McCoy, which 2 seasons ago, not last year because he was hurt, but 2 seasons ago was debatably, maybe not debatably, the best corner in the SEC. They have other corners. You don't have to keep targeting McCoy. You can throw the ball somewhere else. It is an option. Nope. We just kept throwing slants at McCoy. Hi. Do you like playing on hard mode? Like, what is the deal? Like, it is so frustrating, or was so frustrating, that we just kept doing that stuff over and over and over again. And that's the kind of stuff that Buster does not do. He finds who is the weak link or the weak position group or whatever it might be. He's historically done this over and over again, and he runs stuff at that. He's like, hey, you're not as good on film anyway. Let's see if you can deal with this. I'm gonna I'm gonna mess with you. Let's see what happens. And that's exactly what you should do. That's smart football. That's the way that you take a tactical advantage against your opponent, potentially anyway. Hopefully, maybe it doesn't work, but it's the smarter thing to try.
Yep.
And you vary stuff from week to week. And Brad White has talked about doing that already. Now, there's not as much evidence of that as at Kentucky to go back on from film. However, there may be reasons for that, right? So a few different ones, right? With a lot of things have been discussed about
Oh yeah.
was that really Mark Stoops'
Is
defense
right.
and he was just running
Personnel.
it,
Hmm.
or was that personnel? You mentioned it, yeah, exactly. So like there's a lot of things that could come into play there. So we don't 100% know exactly what that's going to look like, but John has talked about in a few different situations and scenarios in the 8 million interviews that he's done. Um, that I think we're definitely going to see the defense will not be, totally different from week to week, but I think you're definitely going to see some variances based on what makes sense. And once again, oh, novel concept, vary, your scheme up, vary your strategy up, vary up what you want to do based on your opponent and what might work better in that particular game, right? Do something to take away their strength where you can, or at least slow it down, right? Make them do something that they're more uncomfortable with, or they're not as accustomed to,
Hmm.
or maybe put it on a player that is less experienced, right? Things of that nature. It's not rocket science, but we were not doing it. If you're not aware somehow, you listen to this podcast, you're aware. But if you're not aware somehow, we did not do that in the Billy Napier era, ever. Period. We just didn't. We did what Billy does, and if it was a good matchup for us, we probably did well, and if it was a bad matchup for us, we didn't. Period. It's end of discussion. That's all that ever happened in that time. And the matchups got worse. Last thing I'll say, the matchups got worse as time went on because teams figured out we were never going to change it, and they were like, "Oh, okay, well, they're just going to do the same thing, so we're just going to do this."
You know
Not,
what? I have a theory on that. I saw something just came to my mind. I have a theory. Billy, one of his favorite players of all time, different sport, basketball, Larry Bird. So Larry Bird notoriously would
mm,
tell people, "I'm going to go to the corner. I'm going to go to the elbow. I'm going to
yeah.
bust a three. I'm going to do no problem. Stop me." Um,
Wow, that's a really interesting parallel.
and it's like, well, if you think your process is that good, or if you think your execution is that good, or you employ your guys to do that, I'm sorry, you have a vast body of work that proves otherwise. So I'll just
Yep.
leave that there.
Yeah, just the concept of my good is better than yours.
Right,
Yep.
right. So and
Hmm.
B, and that's the other interesting thing too, right? Did you hear what On Three's Chris Lowe mentioned a couple weeks ago as far as the
I
Gators being
I did, but I'll let you tell it.
yeah, a dark horse contender for the college football playoff. Interesting.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
I've heard a few more. Heard a few more from different sources and stuff,
Yeah.
potentially kind of floating that idea around. But again, they said that last year too. So,
I know, and they did, and that's what's tough, right? So we're
well, but you
trying.
know why? Because we have a top 15 talent composite
Oh,
ranking,
hey, there's that T word again.
or we're going to. We don't know what it is for 26 yet. I'm telling you, it's probably going to be somewhere in the top 15.
Right, exactly. And the last thing I would say to underevaluation is, guess what? The T word, but more specifically with these two position groups, wide receiver
Yeah,
and running back. Because
yeah.
guess what? We have a quasi first world problem when it comes to wide receiver and running back right now. And folks, I know we have not seen that much of him, but the sample size of Dallas Wilson that we saw, and for I say sample size like this because I mean he's not a small man. He's a matchup nightmare, and if he can be healthy and stay healthy, uh, yeah, I'm sure Buster Faulkner would love to get him the football to make a play or two or 10.
I've been messing around on college football 26 because
Yeah,
27 ready to come out. I've been messing around. I put Dallas Wilson on, like, set the lineup like as much as I could for 27. Not all the players are there, but a lot of them are.
yeah.
Set up the lineup with Wilson as the X. He's messing people up. He's really good. He's really good. So yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of fun. I know the game's not the end all be all, but just saying. I'll go back to one other thing you just mentioned in terms of
What?
talent. Uh, you know, we know about the linebacker situation, and I think that's going to continue to be good.
Yeah.
But I think our D line has dramatically underperformed their talent ceiling
Ooh, good
for a
call.
lot. I don't even have it, and I think I know why. I think the reason why is we didn't
Two
blitz much.
coordinators,
What's that?
two D line coordinators, too many coordinators in the kitchen.
No, no, we only have one D line coordinator. It's not Chapman's fault. I don't think it's Chapman's fault. I think it's a scheme problem. I think it goes back to Ron Roberts here.
Okay.
Too many simulated pressures, too many guys dropping out in coverage instead of actually rushing the passer too often, right? So you're going in, you're going out, you're going in, you're going out, right? It's weird. That's not normal. I'm not saying sim pressures are they're part of the game. I understand
No,
that,
but
but like,
there's a lot of it. A lot of linebackers in coverage.
yeah, we ran a ton of them though. Like we're running a ton of these D line guys out into coverage all the time, and it's like, okay, it's too much. We talked about it anyway. So that's one thing. But the second thing is we're barely ever blitzing. And sometimes those guys need a blitz to help them because they're getting double teamed all the time, or they need to get, some help off the edge, or know that they have help up the middle so they can get out of their lane a little and get more upfield when it is a pass rushing down, so that it's okay to overrun the play a little bit when you're going after the quarterback, right? Because we were so focused on never overrunning the play. I think we lost some of our aggression in terms of a pass rush. I really do. Because we were really good about staying disciplined and keeping the quarterback in the pocket and all that stuff. And that's important. I'm not saying I want to abandon that.
Yeah,
But there were times where I was just like, yeah, that's important. But like, when are you going to hit the quarterback?
I got
Like,
you.
we gotta get in there sometimes. And you're not gonna do that every time, not overrunning the play sometimes. Sometimes you gotta overrun the play to do that. You just have to. It's called a speed rush. Like there's a reason. You don't do that by not running past the guy and therefore outside the pocket a bit and coming back to him. It's just how it works, right? So now, do you want to do that against Marcel Reed? No, no, because he'll burn you, right?
Yeah.
But do you want to do it against Arch Manning? Maybe you could get away with it. I know he can run too, but not like Marcel, right? There's now, in fairness, we put a good amount of pressure on Arch, but like there, you again, be strategic, be smart about it. Don't do it every game, but do it where it makes sense, right? And we're not playing Marcel this year, thankfully. Finally get a year off from friggin' Timu, thank God. But like, but
I
when we
mean,
play this, we
coordinator
should be
make the
making
difference.
doing things to get pressure, right? So anyway, I don't know. I don't know if either one of those things would be right. Maybe we'll be right in the middle. We'll again give our thoughts on the schedule breakdown and what that looks like in a couple of weeks here, and we'll
Yeah.
give you our full analysis as far as what we really think the overall outcome will be of that. And that will not take into account any of this under or overvaluation stuff. That will just be our straight analytical take game by game. But this was fun to do. I want to make sure that we, again, look at all sides, that we're examining all angles, and maybe one of these will end up coming true. Hopefully, if it is one of them, it's the under. But we'll see what happens. And the under being a good thing here. Under's not usually good, but
Right.
undervaluating, right? Undervaluating. So
Well, under promise, over deliver. That's the goal, right?
right, yes, that's the goal. Hopefully, that's what happens. So with that, let's wrap this thing up.
Awesome, man. No, this was an interesting discussion. I remember when you first posed the idea. It's like, okay, we've talked about over and under before, but we haven't gotten into this length and breadth of it when it comes to the expectation of new staff, new new players in the mix. So this was good. But overall, hey, like we mentioned before, we do this strictly because of our love, our passion for Gator football, and not to mention this is a form of therapy, right? So feel free on this new platform here. We went from voice to now you see our wonderful radio faces. So drop us a comment, a like, a share. We appreciate the opportunity to bring this unique perspective on Florida football, purely for, like we said, the love of this program and our love of Florida football in general. Our next pod, Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, is on July the 7th, where we'll be discussing our 11 best players on both sides of the football. So that should be very interesting. You have any insight on that there that you can give the good people?
Yeah, just John talked about he wanted his whole staff to pick their best 11, right? Now I think he said regardless of position, but I don't know if he meant regardless of position on offense or defense. So we're going to do each side just because I think that's worth doing. But on each side, we're going to pick them regardless of position, right? So we might have 5 receivers in our offense. I'm not saying we will, but just throwing that out there, right? We're going to pick who we think the most talented 11 are, regardless of any position on the field. We may not have a quarterback. Spoiler alert. I hope we do, but we may not. I don't know. So these are the kind of things that might come up, right? Just as an example. I haven't picked any of them, so I have no idea. I'm just making stuff up right now. but the point being is that's what we want to go through and do. I thought it was a really cool idea, neat exercise, and I was like, hey, let's do that. We also saw, I can't remember who did it. Gator Country, was it on three? Somebody did it. Some publication did it as well and did an article on it. And I was just like, oh, hey, that's a great idea. Let's do that too. So we're gonna give our take on that and why, and just have a breakdown and a discussion of it. Real high level. Not going to go into super depth, obviously, on 22
Right.
guys. But we are going to discuss where we might differ, either in the players that we have on the list or the ranking of them and why. And that'll pretty much be the just of the conversation when we get to it. So one other thing I wanted to mention in terms of listeners, we have some super loyal listeners to this pod. Just wanted to say thank you. There are people that like tune in every week. I don't know who they
Yeah.
are because we don't get that kind of information, but like I can see like different download locations and stuff like that. And I know that there are people that listen like all over the place, all over the world, and just wanted to say thanks. I think that's super cool, super awesome. So just want to give a shout out and say we appreciate it and love the loyalty, I guess you'd say. But I just really love that you guys like listening to it. So that's really the cool thing. So
Yes.
anyway,
We thank you for that.
guys and girls, by the way. Sorry, didn't mean to imply anything there. So anyway, thanks
No,
again.
never, never, never. And to that end, wherever you are, whenever you may be listening, thank you for taking the time, and we will see you around, Gator Nation.